You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, a podcast where we talk all about Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This week we were watching Ménage à Troi. It was written by Fred Bronson and Susan Sackett, damn them, and directed by Robert Legato. It first aired the week of May 28th, 1990. James, what happens in this one?
The Enterprise is at Betazed for a trade conference, a landmark event with the Ferengi in attendance for the first time. Lwaxana Troi is invited, giving her and Diana a chance to catch up and fight about her lack of a husband. Unfortunately, all is not well as the Enterprise begins another dull mission. While Riker and Troi are enjoying some shore leave and a picnic with Lwaxana, the three are kidnapped by the Ferengi, as Damon Togg desires the Betazed ambassador to be his lover and partner in crime. After many uncomfortable scenes and some pillow talk, Riker sends out a signal to the Enterprise. Meanwhile, Wesley is accepted to the Academy if he can only impress them with his oral skills. But will he make the transport?
Alex, you'd never seen this episode before. What were your thoughts?
I mean, realistically, what do you want me to say here?
You loved it. That's what I want you to say. I want you to say that this is your favourite episode of Star Trek.
I feel kind of like you've sat me down for an hour in front of Bid Up TV and then asked me what the plot was.
I was just thinking this when I was watching it, and it's just... This is certainly a collection of scenes, isn't it? And there is absolutely zero substance to it. There is absolutely zero intention to it. There is just a lot of things and also nothing at the same time.
Now, to add balance here, some of those scenes are okay. Some of them are insane.
It's a silly vehicle for Majel Barrett. That is all it is. And you know what? Over the last few weeks, I've kind of built this up to Alex as this really terrible episode that he's going to hate and that we'll all hate. My memory of it was worse than it is. I actually quite enjoyed it on the level of this is trying to be a silly comedy, and it kind of succeeds, I actually think.
Oh, no.
It's not classic Star Trek. I will openly admit that. But it's like the Doctor Who story, The Twin Dilemma. Everyone wants to describe it as the worst Doctor Who story ever. It's not. It's not good, but it's not enough to really get annoyed about.
I want that to be the pull quote. It's the Star Trek The Next Generation equivalent of Doctor Who, The Twin Dilemma.
I mean, it's not the worst we've seen. It's certainly not the worst comedic episode we've seen, I don't think. I'm just not sure that it all of its parts hang together quite. It's like some bizarre Frankenstein creation that's sort of lumbering into view with its clothes off.
I feel comedy is very hard to do. I know comedy is very hard to do. Anyone who has listened to this podcast will have heard the labouring that goes on trying to get a cheap laugh. But I don't think this goes big enough. If it wants to be that absolutely broad farce, and I'm quite happy for Star Trek to do that. I am delighted for them to go silly, and I think there's one scene that actually works in this, that is actually funny. But the rest of it just feels so half-hearted. I'm happy for them to give Majel Barrett a showcase for her comedic talents, because I think she can be very good, but it just... There's a whole lot of silence before we get to the mild guffaw. So let's start at the very beginning. The Enterprise has been at a trade conference, and boy, do I wish I'd been able to watch the trade conference.
That's Brexit Britain for you, mate. It makes you think weird things.
And then Riker's playing chess with a Ferengi, which is to help us realise that Riker is clever and the Ferengi is not. Why? Oh, and also there's some plot setup music playing in the background.
Yes. Now, we've been here before, haven't we? Last time, it was a never-ending gong. This time, we just get a sort of xylophone rhythm playing. And it just keeps going. And it just carries on underneath the ongoing dialogue. And I think, like last time, we can safely say it's not irritating in the slightest. And it is hilariously funny and not a very poor joke.
What was the joke? That because of that noise he can't concentrate?
Well, can you hear how distracting it is? I mean, I can't even focus on the plot. And I'm sure that has nothing to do with the plot being very inconsequential.
But this tune actually ended up feeding into the plot. It's good that it was invasive and memorable by being annoying.
No, that's not good. That's not good at all that it feeds into the plot. It's completely unnecessary that it feeds into the plot.
I like that.
Riker chose that tune that they'd only heard at a reception in 10 Forward, rather than something which everyone would recognise. Like, I don't know, Morse code? Did Picard not use that? Maybe the prime numbers or something like that. A pattern that is universally recognisable. No, an obscure tune that everyone only heard a few days ago at a reception. Oh, thank God.
I made that loop a lot longer than I thought I had.
Well done, and thank you so much for your contribution. I'd like to end the podcast now. So we've got Riker going, I can play chess. Okay, fine. It's a nice Star Trek thing. And then you've got Deanna and her mother going, why don't you get married? And Deanna going, I'm happy. This is my family. And like, is that them mining the comedy of that mother-daughter relationship? I mean, we can definitely mine the comedy of a sex pest kidnapping women and removing their clothes. That's all very funny. But yeah, I've got ahead of myself.
Go on, you were about to justify.
I was about to justify that it's the bad guy. It's the really bad guy who is. We all know he's the one who says women don't deserve clothes. That he's not set up to be comedy. He's set up to be the really horrible Ferengi. It is justified in that sense. And I had this memory of the episode that they spent half of it naked, but it's not that bad.
Well, although I was watching the start of the episode, and maybe it's because I was braced for something bad happening. I don't know, but I thought that something seemed off with Troi's costume. And what seemed off was that they had pulled the neckline much lower than normal. I may be entirely wrong, but just something didn't seem right there.
Maybe Gene was on set that day.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Wasn't Gene Roddenberry much more involved in this episode?
Are you serious?
I was going to joke that was the case, but is that seriously the case?
I'm pretty sure he was much more involved.
Well, it's his wife who is showcasing her talents here. And maybe you could showcase your talents a bit as well. Yeah, yeah, pull the dress down. That's how I like it.
Hey, Gene, I understand you want to be involved in this episode. In costume. I
mean, it's wrong to speak ill of the dead. He was a bit of a creep, wasn't he?
He did perform a rewrite and add as a description of the fruit during the picnic as a long cylindrical piece of fruit with veins going down the side, and offers it to Riker to take a bite.
Yeah, so the Ferengi have been invited to the conference, and that's a big deal, because they're now getting more involved in the general life of the Federation because they can make some profit. And I suppose that's setting up in some ways the Ferengi of the future. The ones who are sort of slightly cheeky chappies, slightly funny, and aren't completely evil or bad, which is fine. If they're there, you might as well use them to their strengths, which have not yet been established.
Well, why isn't there room for profit in Starfleet? I think competition will drive down profits. We should privatise Starfleet Academy, and that will raise profits, and it will lower costs. And competition is very good. I think the Ferengi have the right idea.
Do you know, I think that there's a good speech that Quark makes which calls BS on the Federation's lack of monetization. That's for another podcast that we won't do.
Deep Space Nine is very good. You should watch that instead of this.
We're never going to finish this. I'm never going to get round to it.
Oh, I was speaking of anybody else. Don't rewatch Ménage à Troi. Watch Deep Space Nine instead.
How many times have you watched Ménage à Troi in the last week, James?
Twice.
You mad bastard.
That's to be fair, that's not in the last week. That's in the last 24 hours.
Oh my god.
That's clearly so much better.
Yeah.
You'd forgotten it in that space of time. Yeah, so did anyone find Picard's suggestion to Riker that he go and take some shore leave a little weird and creepy?
Well, I didn't think anything of it until he was then on the planet with Troi and the very phallic-looking pink flowers. And then I realised that Picard was sending him on a booty call.
Riker did the same to Captain Picard. So, he's just getting a bit of revenge.
I find it very strange. You have that whole section where it is, me and Will have become such good friends now. And then they're on the planet, walking around all coupled up, holding hands, and then kissing. And I feel like this is a bit of a development, and that it's not really given any space or time nor acknowledgement ever again.
Well, they actually forget about it because in the film Insurrection, she says she's never kissed him with a beard.
What, she had a beard? Jesus. Scratchy.
But I can't help but feel the implication is that they are kind of doing this regularly? I don't know. Maybe that's just my sordid mind. Or maybe in the future, friends hold hands and kiss anyway.
It's the 24th century. They do that in the 24th century. It's much more advanced than now.
I mean, I don't recommend sort of going in for a job interview and instead of giving your prospective employer a handshake, you just give him a hand job. They won't give you a job in Tesco. Or maybe they will. I don't know. Probably not in fresh produce.
Again, here we have an episode which is just very light. And yet, we have location filming. Now, episodes have been screaming for location filming. And just to add a bit of texture so we're not just on a polystyrene rock set somewhere. But here, we have a lovely parkland which represents Betazed. And it just seems like it didn't really need to be there, but...
It's like Series 2 when they pissed away all their money on that horse. Also, in that scene, we have a brief appearance from Mr. Hom. Why? I mean, I'm very pleased to see Carl Strucken in any programme, really, but what was the point?
You only want him there if he's got a gong, don't you?
You know very well what we had this time. Don't make me play it again.
I liked Mr. Hom just being there at the end. That's his one appearance this episode, and it's to look a bit confused. That was funny. I laughed at that. That was the funniest bit in the episode.
I'm not going to say it's not, a nice visual gag. Well, that may be an overstatement, but it's there. It's fine. But I'm just amazed that they paid his wage for a day for that.
Well, it might have been that he was only available for the location filming.
Yeah, he's very busy around this period. Look, it's nice to have the richness of the universe, isn't it? The establishes the loyalty of Mr. Home and the importance of Mr. Home. So there's a kidnap plot because we're so invested in it, because when Damon Togg says, "Luxana Troi, you will be mine," and that's the teaser. The interminable teaser, which seems to go on forever, and then you get the credits and you think, oh, Luxana Troi is going to be his. Oh no. So yeah, then they just get beamed up. Beaming technology is like so normal and so everyday. Yeah. If there's anyone with bad intentions, it must be easy to kidnap now, because it doesn't seem there's any way to trace transports or anything like that. It's surprising that people aren't just being transported all over the place every 5 seconds. Someone collecting slaves or something, because we've established that the universe is a mean and hostile place outside of the Federation. Seems easy to steal people. Maybe you could have a little personal force field which prevents transports at all time. Maybe your combad should come with one. I don't know.
But they're within Federation space right now. Betazed is a Federation member, I believe. So they should feel safe.
I guess so. Just those. I mean, they shouldn't have invited the Ferengi to the conference. That was the big mistake.
I'm just glad that he turned up when he did, because seeing the way that it was going, another 5 minutes and Riker would have had his own Federation member out.
You have all this stuff on the Ferengi ship, which is just... It seems like it's just going to be a sort of slightly farcical romance, and then a side escape plot, and then everything will go fine. There's a bit more to it, but do you enjoy that aspect? Do you enjoy the hilarious, I'm pretending to be interested in you, and then the seduction aspect of it? Do you think that works to comedic effect?
No. Not until Picard becomes involved much later on. At this point, I'm sort of sat with my head in my hands going, oh God, really? And it just keeps continuing, and then how can we ramp up the comedy? We'll take off all their clothes. And any thought that I may have had earlier in the episode where I was looking at the costumes going, are they shooting this in a slightly leery way? It's sort of all confirmed at that point.
I mean, me and Andrew are watching this with hindsight of having seen Deep Space Nine, which explores the Ferengi a lot more. And in Deep Space Nine, they have a fair few episodes about women wearing clothes. I know that might sound like a bad thing, Alex, but they actually use that idea quite well. It feels normal within the idea of the Ferengi that they would force women not to wear clothes. It's just a generic evil Ferengi. There's no real shock value when the Ferengi comes in and says, women don't deserve clothes. What
a wonderful impression of Gene Roddenberry you performed just then.
I mean, it's all filler, isn't it? I could sort of get on board with the we're in jail, but I challenge you to a game of chess. Fine. Oh, and you have to let me out my cell, because, clearly the Ferengi is an absolute idiot. I can sort of get on board with that plot line. That's fun. I can get on board with the sort of comedy seduction. If they did some comedy, that would have been good too.
Well, it's the thing. I was sort of expecting that they were going to go into a bit more of a sort of screwball comedy with it.
Yeah.
With the whole... well, I'll just I'll just send a message out to get some help. It's a good thing that they don't have any blockers. Damn, what is it? Blockers, or whatever it was. I can't even remember. This episode just passed me by. But it seemed like there was some obvious. Okay, they would have been broad, humorous moments, but seeing as that's what they were aiming for, I was just surprised that they didn't really take them. Especially because Riker becomes pretty irrelevant to most of this episode now.
Yeah, I mean, he punches out the Ferengi, but he's not.
And then immediately gets captured by another.
Just play up that screwball aspect. Play up the kind of the interplay, the witty dialogue between the Ferengi and Luxana, and maybe have an added aspect to it. Have that science fiction aspect with the telepathy, with maybe Troi feeding her lines or something like that, and that could be quite funny. That could be interesting.
We've already started to write a better scene. She's feeding her lines, she then thinks of something else, and her mother says the thing she's not supposed to. Yes, it's a joke that's been done in many other programs and films. Most people are probably going to be thinking of Anchorman, because that seems to be the one that everyone goes to for that. But that would work here. That would be a really obvious thing to do.
Yeah, and it's like they're setting up. Oh, we can chat and other people can't hear us, and it's sort of used as a plot point to try and get the access codes. But if you're going to do the comedy, use it for comedy. Use your science fiction device in a natural way in this episode. And they always say don't review the episode as you'd want to see it. Review the episode that's there. But there's nothing there, so we have to write our own better episode instead.
But then we wouldn't have the introduction of Umax.
Yes, my ears are my erogenous zone. Please. No one's ever Umaxed me like that before. It's just so rubbish. It's well made. It's just well-made garbage. It seems like they realised they'd got to the end of the season and they had lots of budget left. And it's like, oh, let's do a really great Earth effect out of the window. Let's film lots of new model shots with this Ferengi vessel. And there's nothing to it at all.
All of the budget being thrown at this feels like basically just a Gene Roddenberry ego episode. And, we're being very mean about him, but that is what this is, isn't it? It's a vehicle for his wife and himself to do some rewrites to the episode and basically take control of an episode again.
It feels weird to put your wife in an episode where you're going to get her undressed.
Does it?
Well, to normal people, yes. I realise for Gene, normal doesn't necessarily apply. But that's strange. Is it because it almost comes across as, well, I want to do this, and the only way I'm going to convince them to let me do it is if I say, well, my wife's willing to do it.
Yes, the line at swingers parties all up the country. I don't even know what that means. In the midst of this farce on the Ferengi ship, you then get, well, maybe we should torture her. Yes, let's torture her. And you think, what? Oh, now she's going into the painful and disturbing torture device that might kill her. Ha ha ha! It's a funny episode, isn't it?
We've kidnapped her, taken away all of her clothes, humiliated her, and now we're going to torture her. Light and humorous episode.
I just don't think that fits. If they were saying, well, we're going for this funny episode, it's going to be funny, and then it's like, let's ramp the peril up, except you don't, because you still don't really care, and it just feels so tonally off for them to be doing it, because it's like, I love this woman. Well, I'm fine with torturing her.
Just imagine what it would have been like if they didn't get those dressing gowns, and that all of this is continuing with them still naked. Can you imagine how horrific that would be?
I mean, it's quite horrific already, but yes, I can sort of imagine that.
I can imagine that happens in Gene Roddenberry's rewrite, that they were naked for the whole thing, and then Michael Piller came along and rewrote it again so that they were not naked.
And then they released the original. It's 50 Shades of Grey.
That whole confrontation scene where she's about to get the security codes because she wants to make him a drink, and he's telling her, and then the guy walks in and goes, "You were about to give away everything," and she was like, "I wasn't, I was just going to make a drink." And then it's like, "No, you were going to do," and it's like, well, maybe she was going to do something bad, and it just seems like this ridiculous turnaround, and it's like, well, I was fine with this a minute ago, but now, yeah, let's put her in the torture machine. Maybe we can reverse engineer her. What? You can reverse engineer her psychic abilities? Have they not been around for a very long time and no one's ever really considered that? Yes, but we need to do something to fill out the time. Okay, that's fine.
Hey, at least that's the most ridiculous thing in the episode, and it doesn't amp it up by, say, having Patrick Stewart showing off his Shakespearean abilities.
Okay, the final scene. We'll deal with the B plot later. The final scene where the Enterprise finally comes out of the beautiful anomaly, which is very boringly charting, and goes to the rescue, gets Riker's signal of the irritating music, and then he has to declare his love for Lwaxana Troi. I quite like this scene. It's uncomfortable and it's quite funny. It's probably the funniest scene in the whole episode. Like, I don't really like stuff that makes me cringe particularly. I'd avoid that form of comedy if given the choice. But at least it's got something. And it's very likely just down to the fact that Patrick Stewart is a class act and can deliver. And he knows his sonnets. So, yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. I'm happy with that in a comedy episode, having an actual comedy scene.
It does feel like one of the few times in this episode where, yeah, they genuinely present something funny. Full stop. Even though it does have a sort of bit of a feeling of, I think my character would drive a dune buggy. That's what I think. It feels like that again with, I think my character would be a classically trained Shakespearean actor who works for the RSC. Well, actually, Patrick, what we were thinking is that he might be the captain of a starship and an English Frenchman. No, I think a follower of the Bard. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly hints of that, but do you think they actually wrote anything in the script, or just said, could you uncomfortably recite some lines of Shakespeare? Any'll do, we don't mind. I think I will do the big speech from Macbeth. Not that one. Something romantic.
What piece of work is a man? No, Patrick. Take 37.
But yeah, it's a comedy scene. They take a character, they put him in an uncomfortable situation, and they make him run with it. And to hilarious effect, hilarity ensues, you might say.
And on the subject of Shakespeare, this is a comment from the co-writer Susan Sackett on the episode as a whole. It's a comedy. It's not Shakespeare.
Oh dear.
That is a comment from somebody who does not know who Shakespeare is.
What did Shakespeare do? He did the histories. Yeah, he did the histories. He did the tragedies. Tragedies, yeah, no, the tragedies. What was the other one? Musicals? It was musicals, wasn't it?
Everyone goes on about this Shakespeare guy. Shakespeare this, Shakespeare that. But we all know it's his sister that was the really famous one. We've all heard Stay With Me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, so that's that dealt with, and they all live happily ever after. But during this, you have a plot with Wesley Crusher. Why is this?
Because they need to explain why he hasn't left yet.
Yeah.
So we have this. You've passed your exam. Good. Okay, he's passed his exam this time. He just needs to go and do his orals. Shit, apparently you can't do over Skype.
I've seen some websites that suggest very differently on that front. I have every confidence in your oral ability. Well,
I still haven't downloaded Skype for Subspace.
You have this plot with him, which is barely a plot, where he's helped fix the computer system. What a guy. He is really useful, a valued member of the crew. And he's going away and he's thinking, hey, I never thought I wouldn't ever end up on the Enterprise. What do you think Starfleet Academy is? And it's not really explored in any way. And then he's leaving. And, no goodbyes, not even to your mother.
Yeah, there's not even a sort of cursory goodbye, Wesley. It's literally just piss off.
That's because they're in a rush. He has to
Yeah,
run
but
out.
he could still say goodbye, Wesley, instead of no time for goodbyes, if he really wanted to.
They can speak over Subspace. He can't do an oral exam over Subspace, but they can talk.
All his mother hands him is a tiny little lunchbox. Is that all his possession?
These are your father's ashes.
Yeah. He wanted you to have them when you went to do your oral.
What, to scatter them? No, for lunch. It's a lunchbox, Wesley.
Obviously, Wesley has to save the day. He has to realise that in the static there's this signal, which Data doesn't notice. Data doesn't spot a pattern.
That's because it's a piece of music. It's a piece of music which he wouldn't recognise because he's an android.
Right. He doesn't do music, does he?
No. He can't do contractions,
No.
he can't do music, but he's good with anything else.
Right. Okay, that's good. I mean, he can't do idioms either. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand common phrases or sayings.
But he is apparently quite good at sex. They really felt a need to just highlight that one.
I mean, you don't need to be good at idioms to be good at sex.
So you have that, and then he doesn't go. And you're right, it is an excuse for him not to leave. Also, I think it's an excuse to give him a new uniform. One that actually zips up at the back. Like that sad little belt at the back of his trousers with the flaps coming down. Which they never thought to stitch up.
So what was the outcome of him not going? I sort of switched off slightly by this point.
He's not going to Starfleet Academy, but he's basically been promoted.
He's given a field commission.
So he doesn't have to go. He still has to go to Starfleet Academy later, presumably.
He is still going to Starfleet Academy in a year's time, but for the next year he'll be on the Enterprise and given all the privileges of an ensign rather than an acting ensign.
I think we've mined that for all it's worth. Let's say a few more things in quick fire.
Quick fire.
Dr. Farrick, the Ferengi. I don't know if we ever see another Ferengi doctor, but they're played by Ethan Phillips, who will go on to be even more irritating as Neelix in Star Trek Voyager.
Director Robert Legato remembers the script was written by Gene Roddenberry's secretary, Susan Sackett, along with her partner, Fred Bronson, and Gene's wife Majel Barrett was in it, so he was on set all of the time. It made me nervous. He goes on, but I think we gather enough from that to understand why the episode is the way it is.
The scenes on Betazed were filmed at the Huntington Library Botanical Gardens in Pasadena, which you might recognise from Justice, where Wesley fell in a bush.
My copy of the Nitpicker's Guide, if you just leave it to fall open, opens on Ménage Troi. It's not a very interesting point, but it is more interesting than anything that they have to say.
Waxana calls Damon Tock a troll, and I'm a bit confused how a Betazoid would know what a troll is. It's an inherently human thing, isn't it?
Well, she was married to a human.
Do you think that would come up in a marriage? You know, would a mythical ancient human beast?
Maybe he was reading Diana fairy tales, and it came up then.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, this is the biggest plot hole of the episode.
The nude scenes are performed with body doubles. I just got a feeling that some of our listeners wanted to know that.
After Wesley was promoted, Gene Roddenberry gave Will Wheaton the second lieutenant bars he earned in the Army Air Corps. Which seems odd, but present at the ceremony was General Colin Powell, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who would later become Secretary of State. That's weird, isn't it?
And it was at that point that Will Wheaton realised he was going to quit the show.
That wraps up another fine episode of First Contact. We will be back again when we're talking about transfigurations. We hope you will join us then. Goodbye.
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 I feel it was a satisfying part of this plot arc because he's such a valued member of the crew.
I'd like to see a more realistic take on it. Like if you were going to go to university and then decided at the last minute, no, I'm not going to go. And then you go back and discover that, in actual fact, you're on the dole for a year.
I'm sorry, Wesley. Your quarters have been turned into a multi-gym.
Should I...
I don't know, I found that so funny.
Captain, should I take my seat at command? Well, Wesley, yes, I think you should take your seat. In the job centre? Are you having that one, Riker?